Hello, everyone. This is D2 Kasui. I'd like to welcome you to Urban Financial Services Coalition special session on Myers-Briggs featuring Russ Moon, one of my favorite facilitators, colleague, and friend. Our agenda for today is we'll have the welcome, and all of you should be welcoming each other in the chat by throwing your name and your city and your LinkedIn profile so that we can all welcome each other and greet each other. We will have a short networking session. Then we'll have a few remarks from the Urban Financial Services National President, and then we will get on to the introduction of the speaker and to have listen to his presentation. And at the end of his presentation, we'll have the Q&A, and then we'll make some special announcements. So that is the agenda for today. Next, we're going to do breakouts. So what we're going to do in the breakout room is we're going to have you share your name and the company that you're with, and then share one thing you know about Myers-Briggs and how do you currently use that knowledge for business or personal success. So one thing that you know about Myers-Briggs and how do you currently use it for business or personal success. Welcome back, everyone.
Too short.
Did I hear the message that the breakout was too short?
Yes.
Well, you'll have to come to one of our virtual networking sessions where all we do is network. You know, and that way we have less presentations and more opportunities to talk with your colleagues and build relationships across the country. So we'll be marketing one of those events soon, and you'll get an opportunity to continue the conversation. So with that, I would like to turn the floor over to my colleague, my good friend, and the leader of Urban Financial Services Coalition, straight out of Kansas City, Missouri, your friend and mine, Miss Ola Mae Truelove.
I tell you, D2, you something or another. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Yeah, I would concur the breakout session, even though it's longer than it usually is, we actually were able to introduce ourselves and answer all the questions that you asked us to answer. So that was a good opportunity there. But welcome to everyone on the call this evening. I'm excited about what's in store, just the ability to listen to Russ and see how he's going to lead us. One of the things that I am adamant about saying now, because as we're in this process of this election, we've got 26 days, 7 hours, 10 minutes, and counting down to being able to vote in this presidential election this year. So I'm just asking everybody to make sure, hopefully you're registered and you're prepared to vote for your new president. So thank you very much again for joining us. Urban Financial Services, we are here to continue to empower each other. We have a website that I'd love for you to take a peep at. I will put it in the chat room, www.ufscnet.org. Take a moment to visit that chat room. And if you're looking at maybe hosting or being one of our speakers, we have a speakers bureau page there. We'd love for you to check that out. So again, welcome. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Mr. Kasui.
Our pleasure to serve you, Madam President. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our colleague. Our speaker today is the founder and CEO of MaxPro LLC, which is a professional advocate, coach, and strategic consultant. He challenges organizations to identify, embrace, and integrate individual value while embracing the diversity of a team-centered environment. As a result-oriented development consultant, thought leader, and career coach with a proven track record for delivering change across diverse corporate channels through the deployment of innovative and actionable solutions to enterprise challenges, his successes have positioned him as a quality-driven problem solver, strategist, and cross-functional communicator with the ability to drive improved professional performance, efficacy, and engagement in support of enterprise development and growth. Prior to his current role, he has had various leadership roles with top Fortune 500 companies to include Capital One, Hickory Brands Incorporated, Midwestvaco, General Electric, and Wells Fargo Bank. He's also has proudly served in the United States Army in the 50th Signal Battalion Airborne, Fort Bragg, and received his formal education from the Citadel for his BS in Business Administration, Strayer University for a Master in Business with an emphasis in HR as an emphasis. And in his free time, I don't know when he finds it, he enjoys spending time with his wife and 2 daughters, and he enjoys largemouth bass fishing and won Virginia State's Championship for World Big Bass Championship in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce my good friend and my colleague, Russ Moon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you
Let's
see
give
my screen?
Russ a virtual hand clap. There you go. You can go ahead and share your screen, Russ.
Okay. Okay, sharing. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, D2 and President Truelove. Thank you for your remarks. I did take notes. And yes, my name is Russ Moon. And to kind of remove the mystery, when I was at Wachovia, then Wells Fargo, I was a member of the Richmond chapter of the Urban Financial Services Coalition. My division manager, Michelle Roshan, I did it as a developmental thing, and it was very helpful. She was also the person that helped me in terms of sending me to become qualified as a Myers-Briggs facilitator. So all of this stuff, the good vibrations, the good experience, the relationships have now lasted, I don't know how many years it's been, 8 to 10 years downstream. And we feel very comfortable with each other because we sit at the board meetings every month. I did a version of this for the Richmond chapter 8 or 10 years ago. So yeah, that's how we know each other, and that's how this came about. So I want to thank you for being here because I do work in the business or the field of coaching people and helping them improve their performance. Yeah, I've worked with athletes, I've worked with children, I've worked with college interns, CEOs, I work with special agents in the Secret Service, all with Myers-Briggs. So as I'm, I have an 8-year-old that I'm kind of training, and I told her, I said, talent is awesome. I said, but, showing up and paying the price and doing the work on a consistent basis is the great equalizer, because you're not going to be more talented than everyone you're going to have to compete against. But what you can control is investing in yourself. And I said, I've never regretted anything I did to invest in myself. And I know when people take effort and invest in themselves in the right place, really good things happen. And I see that all the time. So I'm excited, and I can tell you I'm prepared. And I'm going to leave you with some things today that I think, if you ponder them and act upon them, you're going to see it's, pretty powerful. These are things that I kept distilling over the weeks. These are a collection of facts that have kind of popped out with everyone I've worked with this over the last 15 years. These are things they all, in most cases, had in common, including myself. Okay, so I've got 30 years of experience with Myers-Briggs, 13 years as a qualified facilitator. And so it's not my first time. I do have my LinkedIn link here. So that was, I'm glad I put that on there because D2 was saying to share it and I had it in my slide. If you send me an invite, I'll accept upon receipt. If you want to dig into my background when nobody can look, you can. I've got 85 endorsements from everything from, training SAP's global recruiting team to all the different places I've worked, people that I've worked for, work with me. You can see what they had to say. And I didn't write all those endorsements, 30 minutes before I came on this presentation. But I have them there as a way that people can kind of say, hey, what's this guy? What are these 85 guys actually, or guys and gals say this guy's like? It's a good thing to have those endorsements. And I can tell you when I secured my job, when I was working for KPMG, my boss actually went into those endorsements and ran like a word check to see the phrases they used to describe me the most. And that was part of how he decided to hire me, as a reference check. So I mentioned this stuff because these are the little things that if you don't have it, it makes a big difference. Okay, I'm going to move on here to the next slide. Okay, and this is something I'm involved with, and I am a introvert at heart. So I don't wake up every day desiring to speak about myself, but in my role that I'm doing now, it's part of my work outside my preference. And I'm saying that because I've been working on this, 4 or 5 decades. But I am a candidate for the Master Practitioner credential. I decided if I was going to continue to do this and if I liked it as much as I did and if it was helping people as much as it was, that I was just going to go in and, go as far as I could go. So this requires 40 credit hours of advanced study beyond your facilitator designation, and then 40 hours of logged practical application working in the field. So this is something, I've started. This is my next step of where I'm going. And this will come into play with some other things later, but this is telling you I'm really serious about this. It's probably, of all the facilitators, it's probably 1% have the master qualification. Okay, so when we're talking about business and personal life success, I'm going to throw some big topics out here. And you need to kind of filter through the information and kind of validate it for yourself, because everyone is different. And that's one of the things I actually like about Myers-Briggs, is it places the concept of diversity right in the person's face. Because there's 16 different types, there's all these different letters. And if you do a group of people, excuse me, any group, everyone's not going to be the same. And it becomes very obvious everyone's not the same. And when you move beyond, because I do understand that there's a lot of misinformation out there about Myers-Briggs. I see, not naming names, I see people writing articles who, when I look at their first paragraph, I know they're really not a qualified facilitator. So consequently, there's a lot of information out there.
Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back in 1 hour. CNN special coverage of.
Okay, that wasn't me.
Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
About, you need to validate this for yourself. I did think that was funny. Okay, so success, however you want to define it. So my point here is, when I'm laying out this information, I'm not debating what the definition of the word is. It's whatever you want it to be. It's whatever you validate it is for yourself. I just want you to see if the principle resonates with you. And I'm going to show you how all of this I'm doing my hand, it weaves together. So success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. And you see the person pushing like a bale of hay. Okay, so decisions right here lead to effort. You have to decide to do something strongly enough to motivate yourself to actually take some action. You know, until somebody pushes this bale of hay, it's not going to go anywhere. And if you choose not to make a decision, then you've made a choice. And this is going to hold true whether it's in your business or personal life. It's going to be the same thing. And this is something I think is it's significant to me as I've done more with Myers-Briggs. When I first came in contact with this, everyone who was presenting it to me, it was normally in some type of corporate environment, and they were using it as a business performance enhancer, like a corporate steroid. You know, here we're gonna expose you to Myers-Briggs, and this is gonna make you a performance superhuman, which that is true. It can do that. But what I didn't realize in my own personal journey is that these same behaviors that could supercharge me on the business side, you know, they could also help me in my personal and family life as well. So I would encourage you to find one or both of these that really, you know, interest you and say, you know, I'm going to dig into this because I'd like to start a journey to see, you know, in my personal life, how can this help me resolve X, Y, Z? And if it helps me in my business life, then that's a bonus. Or go over to the business side and said, I really would like to see if this would help me with A, B, C. And if it helps me with my business life, it's a bonus. And all I'm trying to do is give you something tiny you can actually make a decision and commit to, because it's going to help both, but you're going to need to find that out, you know, how much it helps both. And so when I got, I'm glad D2 mentioned the stuff about fishing, and I'm not going to talk about that the whole time. I'm just going to say I drink my own Kool-Aid. So a couple years ago, 2 years ago, I was going through the Myers-Briggs and getting ready to start this program. And I was like, you know, I tell people all the time, this will help you in your hobbies, your personal life. I know it's true. I've talked to people from this organization that say they use it every day. But, you know, just as in my own personal entertainment, I had a coach who was encouraging me to enter this bass fishing contest. And I said, I'm going to use my Myers-Briggs with my bass fishing to see if it makes a difference. I was already rated a lifetime expert, and he wanted me to fish from the bank and compete in the state of Virginia. I said, dude, you know, I'm good. I don't, you know, he's in the Fishing Hall of Fame. And I was like, okay, I'll give you my best shot. I think I can be competitive, but I don't know if I can beat everybody standing on the no boat, no nothing. And I used the Myers-Briggs and won the state championship. And it was like a joke. I was like, wow. And the bottom line was it made me more aware of how I was decisioning. And I started recognizing where my own decisioning was holding me back. And I started trying the other techniques that I normally never would have had done. And they paid off so much, I won the tournament. So, you know, all I can say is for the people who implement the things I coach them on, they're as a whole wildly successful. I've had people quadruple their income in 3 years. I've had CEOs, you know, work a year and get like a 6-figure raise. I've had, you know, people do all kinds of good things. It's very, very powerful, but it can help you in your business or personal life. And this concept of success being the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out, just kind of look at that as the definition of success. And then we're going to kind of pull this concept over to Myers-Briggs, and you're going to go like, wow, these are almost the same thing. Okay, so I had an epiphany when I was putting this together. I was like, wow, this is so interconnected. Okay, so this is something I came across, and you know, we're confined by our own, to a degree, we're confined by our own behaviors, by the walls we build ourselves through the decisions we make or don't make. So the main thing I would want to put across for consideration here is that as we're making decisions and we're choosing our own courses of action, that our preferences to a large degree are driving what we choose on a daily basis. And therefore, if success consists, you know, of these daily efforts towards a goal, your daily decisions of where you interact and don't interact and engage and don't engage, that shapes your future. And if you don't know what your preferences are, you can still be successful, but you're not going to be everything you could have been. And you have to understand that to a degree, however successful you are with knowing nothing about this, those preferences are driving your direction every day, whether you just choose to remain on autopilot or whether you choose to really become aware of how your preferences, how you're impacting yourself. So that's just a graphic I saw, and I found that interesting. I was like, okay, I think this is definitely thought-provoking. Okay, let's go on. So in everyone I've ever worked with, and I'm talking about high performers, so anyone in this meeting, anybody who's after work hours or at the end of the day studying Myers-Briggs and trying to find something to become more successful, you're some type of a high performer. Here is so if I could only leave you with one thing that is money in the bank, that is golden, that is so apocalyptically the truth, the number one way high performers hurt themselves, I call it the big negative. The big negative. The big negative, if it was sports, the big negative would be the quarterback fumbling the ball in their own end zone or throwing an interception for a touchdown. In the business arena, this could be, you know, looking at my career, I'll make myself the example so no one feels, I don't know anything about anyone here that would be a big negative, but just to take that off the board, it would be something that would happen to where I was a 2 or 3% level performer, and it might take people 3 or 4 months to forget it. It was something that does tremendous harm, halting your forward momentum. It's so bad. And B, the secondary damage of the big negative is the enormous cost to you and the team and the organization in terms of repairing the damage that the big negative does, delaying future momentum. Okay, so if I use a non-human example, let's say you're going on a very important trip in your car, and I'm going to go from here, from, you know, Virginia, and I'm going to Oakland. And on the way to Oakland, my tire blows out as I'm going down the highway. I would call that a big negative because it could cause a collision and it's going to totally halt my forward momentum. I'm not making time towards my destination. It's come to a screeching halt. And then there's that aftermath, because now I've got to either go into my trunk, find my spare, take the time, put it on, hope it's right. If it's a temporary spare, then I'm running on it wondering if it's going to blow up, or do I need to get another tire, or do I need to call AAA? And I guess I'm having a flashback because I was painting a rental house with my 8 years old, and our tire blew out at 11:30 at night, and we were in a parking lot. And she's going, I'm scared, I'm scared. Yes, I mean, that was definitely a big negative. So you want to avoid these things at all costs. And I can share with you, it's not a bad thing. Everyone has them. And if you're out there in the arena doing big things, moving at a fast pace, knocking over barriers, you're going to have some of these. But this is the number one factor for people who are elite level performers. Number one by a mile. And here's the thing, the higher the level the performer is, the more horsepower they can generate, which means when they have the big negative, it's big. Because they're not moving, they're not at a jog. They're not at 5 miles an hour. They're at 150 miles an hour, in a Formula One car going, zing! And when they have a big negative, it's big. So the more horsepower the person has to do good, the bigger the big negative can get. And it doesn't just involve the person creating it, it involves everyone around them. So when I work with people, one of the first things, we do, because, people have, like I said, all this misinformation around Myers-Briggs. I'm like, look, nobody's trying to change you into something that's not authentic to you. But what we're going to do first is start making you aware of how not to hurt yourself. Because if that's all you do, your forward momentum, think about all the time you would save, on your trip if you never had to change your tire, you never had to stop for gas, you never had to eat, you just went straight to your destination. You'd be moving much faster. Okay, enough on that, but this is the number one way high performers or people hurt themselves. And this is the fastest way to accelerate someone's performance. This is the first thing I go to right here. It's like, look, before you drive your car, let's first release the parking brake so you can go faster, get better gas mileage, and it's not straining your motor. Sets them free. Okay, stopping the big negative, And here we're kind of going into a little bit, it doesn't have to be Myers-Briggs, but Myers-Briggs certainly can be super helpful. Step one is you have to recognize the situations where you personally, historically, are prone to implode. You have to recognize the situations where you historically are prone to implode. It's not going to be the same for everyone because everyone doesn't have the same type. It's going to be different. But everyone has situations because of their preferences where for that combination of letters, certain things are going to put you in a place, I call it the danger zone, where you're going to be much more prone to implode and have a big negative. Very important to recognize those situations. When in the reports that I use in working with the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, it will actually, per your type, it's a very in-depth report. It's going to show you certain situations where if you're in one of these situations, you need to really, really put your foot on the brake and slow down and breathe and look around because you're about to blow yourself up. This is very, very powerful. And I had a sheet that I had taped to my desk for like 2 years that had 10 to 15 behaviors for me or situations because this big negative thing was big. I can generate a lot of horsepower, but especially early in my career, I could just blow up, not explode on anyone, but I could just have a big negative because I was going really, fast with my career. So when I made a mistake, it was a big one. But I would put this sheet of paper on my desk because I was like, look, if I could just quit doing these once or twice a year big negatives, I could probably have, instead of having, 7 promotions in 8 years with the company. I was in the pharmaceutical industry at the time. I could have been even higher. But anyway, wasn't doing bad, but I wanted to stop that. So I had this list of behaviors, and every day when I was coming into sit down at my desk at Solvay, which is now part of Abbott, I would look at this list of things as I had my morning cup of coffee, and I would say, okay, am I feeling any of these things? And I remember coming in there one day, and out of the 15, I was feeling like 8 of them. And I kind of pushed away from my desk, and I was like, wow, it's a wonder you haven't blown yourself up, but at least you have this list. And, I had my cup of coffee, and I just kind of breathe, I did some breathing for about 20 minutes. I'm like, look, you're so deep into getting ready to blow yourself up, you probably don't even know you're about to do it, but your list has told you you are. So you need to pause and really review any interactions you have with people today, any decisions you're making. You need to double and triple think it to make sure you don't blow yourself up today. And each and every day until you look at this list and you don't feel this way anymore. But that saved me more than once. And I got to the point where I did this enough, and it was like, 5 minutes to look through the list. No, I don't feel that. No, I'm not in this. I got to the point I didn't need the list. It's just like on automatic pilot. But that was and that was in the 90s where I started learning how big the big negative was. And then as I got into coaching all these people in these different things, it just came up over and over and over and over and over. And it became a big part of my practice, because I was like, I can authentically tell people that are afraid of, doing behavioral work or having somebody work with them. It's like, look, I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just trying to get you to turn off your parking brake if you're going to drive your car. You do that and see how it feels and tell me, is it not easier, and are you not moving faster? That's all we're doing here. And it's so easy because you don't need to develop a new skill. You just need to release your parking brake and not wreck your car, on purpose, or even if it's subliminal. So there's 2 phases in this, and this also pertains to Myers-Briggs. You have eliminate, reduce the damage of the big negative. Now, when you first start using this preference work, you have these reports. It's going to show you situations where you're in danger, really highly in danger of the big negative. You will start to recognize these situations. Some, it's a stop sign, and you'll recognize that you need to stop before you get to the intersection, and you will stop, and therefore you will eliminate the big negative. In other places, until you learn how to do this and what it looks and feels like, you may not eliminate it, but you're going to reduce the damage. So if, let's say if this was, the Urban Financial Services Coalition, if the damage was going to cost you 10,000 units, you may reduce the damage to 2,000 units. But guess what? That's a lot less, and it's a lot easier to recover from that. So that's a major. So I have 2 positives. If you eliminate the big negative, the damage, all the damage, 1 if you reduce it. Okay, then there's the flip side that people don't always look at, and I call it the, damage control, the cleanup, which I think is as horrible as the big negative, because you're just immersed in repairing all this damage that happened from some event, which could have been very brief, and it can go on and on and on for months, because if it involves relationships and they get injured, I mean, you just got to kind of reprove yourself to people, and things don't roll the way they should roll. So you have 2 levels. You have eliminating the cleanup and reducing the cleanup. Well, guess what? If you eliminate the damage, there is no cleanup, because there's nothing to clean up. So here's my point, going back to this road trip, and I'm thinking about California every day. So Oakland, if I'm going to Oakland, I'm going to arrive in Oakland much faster if I never have to stop. Okay, does everybody get this? If I just set my cruise control, if it's 65 miles an hour, it's the speed limit, or 70 or whatever it is, I'm going to set my cruise control and I'm going to get to Oakland a lot faster if I never have to stop. It doesn't mean when my car was running, I was running the motor faster. I wasn't. It never left 70 miles an hour, but I will get there much more rapidly if I never have to stop. So it's the same thing with the big negative. If you're working with people, if you're trying to achieve a personal goal, if you're working on something in your family or your personal life, you can make much more progress with far less effort if you never have the big negative, because you're not getting the setback, which means you arrive where you want to be faster and with less wear and tear, because you don't get all the jerking of repairing the damage and the stop start. It's like, you know, bumper to bumper traffic in the city is much harder driving than on the highway. Okay, hopefully that came across, because those are really big points. Okay, so here's this awareness thing. So what this represents, this is a minefield. Okay, you see the mines under the ground. Here's the person, they're walking out over this minefield, and when they step on this, it's going to blow up. So this represents the big negative. When you step on this, it blows up. You have a very bad result. Obviously, you're not going to go forward when that happens, and there's going to be some, you know, some damage. So part of the process with Myers-Briggs, when you learn yourself and your type and you have access to these reports, is you're going to learn situations where when you enter this minefield, you're going to recognize it before you step on the mine and blow yourself up. You're going to recognize, whoa, I'm getting ready to, you know, I'm getting ready to have a big negative. I'm entering this area where historically, or per my type, there is the highest probability that I'm going to run my train off the rails. I really need to put myself on a pause, or, you know, come up with something different, because if I just ignore this and la-di-da-di-da walk through there, then the inevitable is going to happen. Okay, so my point is, you have to recognize what you're in. And if you knew this was here, if you could recognize or read the sign, danger minds, if you could read that and you knew what that meant, would you still willingly walk right through the middle of it when it's not necessary? What I'm saying is you probably would not. Key concept. But if you don't recognize what's going on, you're on autopilot, and you're going to find out you're in the danger zone when you blow yourself up. That's what's going to happen. So it's very important to recognize your situation, and the way you recognize your situation, or one way you can get, you know, an advantage or leverage in recognizing your situation, is to really learn your personal preferences and your type, and know where these danger zones are going to be for you to stop, take the big negative off the table. You have to recognize where you are in order to stop. You have to stop when you recognize you're getting ready to walk into this, you know, danger zone. You don't have to stop forever, but you got to stop and kind of reorganize, kind of gather yourself, examine your options, and then proceed. And frequently, when you get in this situation where you recognize you're coming into that kind of the danger zone, and you stop and examine your options, 99 times out of 100, you know, if somebody calls me and they, you know, tell me, you know, they tell me what's happening and go, man, I really felt like I was going to blow myself up. 99 times out of 100, it's because it has something to do where a situation called for a solution which was not their preference. The situation they were in was calling for a particular solution, which was not their preference. So they weren't choosing the right solution, which is why they found out they were trying to, were about to blow themselves up. This applies to everything. So in clothing, I mean, we're coming out of summer here. It's still been super hot. My daughter and wife like to go to the park and, do their exercise. I'm really hot natured. I sweat a lot, not getting gory here, but I'll go out in the summertime and wear a tank top. And once I get in my tank top mode, I'm like, it's cool. I'm not too hot. I feel free. I can move. And I want to wear those tank tops once I get into full summer mode. It's my preference. But now that we're in October, it's too cold to wear a tank top, right? But if I keep wearing the tank top because it's my favorite thing to wear, guess what? Eventually, the situation's going to get so cold that I'm going to get sick because I'm clinging to my preference. This stuff applies to everything. If you just look around, it applies to everything. But for right now, I would say, try to learn to recognize your situation, stop, examine your options, and getting out of the place where you feel like you're, hemmed in or gridlocked or not moving as forward as fast as you could. This is frequently going to involve something related to your area that's not your preference, because that's why what you're doing is not working. It's not what's required. Okay, then proceed. Okay, this is just a how Myers-Briggs can help. I'm already kind of alluding to that. But this is actually a picture of a report. The reports I use are 10 pages. They are exceptionally deep. I've been exposed to this particular vendor since the 90s. When I was in the pharmaceutical arena, I worked with sales training. I was in the training department, and our vice president came in and made us take like every type of tool known to man. And one of them was Myers-Briggs. And we had this type of report, and I just knew it was helpful. And I went downstream and became a facilitator. When I looked for a vendor, I found this company, and then it hit me. I'm like, this is the same. This was that report I had when I was back at Solvay, so it's by far, like if this is 100 and that's the top, I would say I haven't seen anything that's even an 80 compared to this. This is like heads and shoulders above any report I've ever seen. It's 10 pages. It's very, very, very in depth. And it's got all the information as to your letters, what it means, and more importantly, how it plays out in your daily life. Okay, there's more to Myers-Briggs than saying, I know my 4 letters. Okay, that's great. Congratulations. That's wonderful. But there's so much power in using this, even on a beginning level. I was telling D2 in an earlier conversation, I said, this is so potent. It's like nitroglycerin. 1 drop of this stuff, if you use it just a little bit, it's so powerful. A little bit's a game changer. So remember I said earlier, as a joke to myself, it was just kind of, I wanted to investigate. I'm like, okay, I'm going to enter this contest in this bass fishing tournament, and every decision I make, I'm going to put it through the Myers-Briggs grinder, which is going to mean I'm going to totally throw my competition up in the air, because I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff possibly I've never done before, and that's not going to make me feel super confident. But I'm going to tell you something. There were many days I went to the water and I'm saying, okay, this is not what I would normally do, but this is really what everyone who's an expert says the situation calls from. And voila, I started catching more and larger fish all day long. And I, finally consulted my Hall of Fame coach, and he was like laughing. And he goes, look, if you keep doing the same things you've always done, you're going to get the same result. He goes, look, you grew up throwing baits on the top of the water, and those are great for the spring and summer, but they don't work in fall and winter. And now in fall and winter, you've changed your strategy, and now you're using the baits that the fish are actually, mimic something they eat. And that's why you're now consistently catching them. But he thought it was real. He says, hey, better late than never. Some people never get this. Good for you. Good for you that you're willing to change. But that's what it took. And then once I let go and started seeing the results, I just totally gave into it. And I'm still doing it now. And it's, 2 years later, it's this year was even better than last year, even though I fished less. But this will apply to, anything. All I've got to do is show you enough to get you to try it. If you ever touch it and start trying it, the amount of time once somebody starts doing this for them to see results is like 2 weeks. It's not a year. It's not 6 months. It's like 2 weeks. It's not very long. Okay, so we have a report. The report that I use, I consider best in class. You have to be a qualified facilitator to access this report, and this report is accessed in the best of class software that I have, to where I can send someone a link. They take their instrument. It tells me when they've done it, and I can generate their report right from my desktop, or I can save it until the facilitation. But the reporting is very good. Yes, you can go places online and try to get things which mimic Myers-Briggs that are free. On a scale of 1 to 1,000, you're dealing with the stuff that's at the 0 to 10 level. This is at 1,000. This is the top of the line. This is what this agency, this is what the big boys and girls use to get a leg up on the competition. So, for those people who are saying, hey, I want a competitive edge, I want to be able to defeat XYZ group. Okay. You'd be surprised. A lot of the people who are currently getting the best of you, a lot of them are using this. You may not know it, but that doesn't mean they're not using it. Go to the next slide. 2 big things you want to be able to do. Recognize. If you don't know what you're looking at, you can't recognize it. If you don't know what it is, recognize the threat. Your threat is the big negative as you start off. It's the big negative. That's the one thing you can do the fastest that's going to increase your momentum the most. Eliminate the big negative. And then the next step is recognizing your specific opportunities for your type, your preferences. So I had, have a guy that was going into real estate, and I kind of watched him. He was, also is a state champion auctioneer. I mean, whatever he does, he's really good at it. But I just noticed when he waded into situations and it was a real frenetic pace, he would normally win. And I told him, and I said, look, as you're doing your real estate, I said, I'm going to kind of put this in a code, and I think you're going to get it. I said, let's just say you're a fastball hitter. When somebody throws you the fastball, you knock it over the fence. It's like a home run. I said, so what I want you to do is, I said, I don't want you to work harder, but I want you to become more aware of the opportunities that are passing by you every day. And I want you to look for the fastball. And if you see the fastball, swing on it. I said, because every time you swing on one of these fastballs, 99 times out of 100, you're doing something awesome. So we want to find more of these awesome things where you can engage. So just by, reducing the big negative and doing something as simple as that, he came out of the chute, and in his first 4 months, he sold $5 million of real estate. Okay, so, I can talk until I'm tired. I know it works. I'm using it on myself, and I'm just saying, the biggest step is getting someone to try it. And I say, look, if you do this for 30 days, I'm going to ask you every week what happened. I said, you're not even going to go 30 days. You won't even go 1 week without seeing changes. And if you go 30 days or 6 weeks, it's going to be so obvious. Other people are going to start commenting on you. They're going to be like, what did you do? You did something. And then you're going to be like chuckling, going, gosh, I wasn't even going to do this, and now I did. And yes, it is true. Okay, so Carl Jung is a noted psychologist, was a contemporary of Sigmund Freud, and he wrote a book called The Psychology of Type. And his work became the basis for the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And this is something he said. Now, I want you to go back and try to link to that slide that had the bale of hay, and it was saying success is, small bits of effort that you're involved with every day. So look at what he says says here. Much seemingly chance variation in human behavior is not due to chance. It is, in fact, the logical result of a few basic observable preferences. So when we see people act out in a certain way, it's frankly not, random chance. It's a logical result of the way their letters are put together. And if you get this in-depth 10-page report I'm talking to you about that I've mentioned, that thing goes so deep. I mean, people are like gasping for air going, I can't believe how accurate this thing is. But my point is, you're making these decisions which impact your success every day. And the way you're going to make your decisions for your type is actually very logical, based on a few basic preferences. It's not going to map out every action you're going to take before you do it, but it's very predictable what the patterns are going to be. Very, very predictable. If somebody were to read, the report or what it says about an INTJ, that's me. And if I was to read yours about you, or if you were to read it, you'd probably go through that and go, yeah, well, that is true. Okay, so what I want to impart with you here, in order to recognize threats and opportunities with yourself, you have to know yourself enough to recognize it. If you don't, you're just on autopilot. It doesn't mean you can't be extremely powerful and successful without doing any of this. But what it does mean is if you're just on autopilot, when those situations come up that call for something other than your fastball and you don't have it, that's when you're going in the direction of your own personal big negative, whatever it is. And that these behaviors and decisions we make every day, they're not due to chance. They're the logical result of a few observable preferences. And if you know what those few observable preferences are, and you know what they mean for yourself, you will see how accurate they are. And they're very accurate. So what can you expect to receive if you start kind of following just the coaching I've laid out today? Okay, common sense, it's so simple, it's like hiding in plain sight. So number one, if you were to put into play eliminating the big negative, just that alone, your momentum is going to increase. And your momentum will increase because it's not slowing down due to something that happened where you had to stop and clean the mess up. Hopefully that makes sense. You're going to reduce your fatigue. Okay, for me, one of my big negative indicators is when I get sleep deprived. If I get sleep deprived, I can turn into potentially the wolf man. So I know if I go 3 or 4 days and I'm really super duper sleep deprived, that's one of my triggers for the big negative. I have to come back, or I have to say, pause. I need to get more sleep tonight, because even though I feel like I need to go on and on and on and on, if I keep doing this, I know what's going to happen, and that's going to be worse on my guilty conscience than getting 3 more hours of sleep. So it's going to reduce your fatigue in general. Why? Because you're not having the trauma of these big negative impacts, and you're not having the workload of having to clean up the mess. So all that energy, instead of it going into damage control, allows you to sit on cruise control, watching yourself pass the next mile marker on your journey to your destination with less effort. Consequently, you're going to be calmer. I mean, if you were to look at, a car accident, an airplane crash, some type of catastrophe, the people aren't calm when this is happening. You can't be calm. You're adrenalized when things are happening like that, and you're in situations that you feel are endangering you, whether they're physical, mental, emotional. It gets you geared up. And I don't know of anyone, who a certain amount of adrenaline is good, but, when you're not at your peak, you're going to typically perform better. When you're a little bit calmer and you can think things through, you can still move fast, you can still move with great authority, but you don't want to be in this fight or flight mode all the time. But these are 3 things that when I work with people, coaching them, these are 3 things that come up as they're trying to describe what they're feeling. The reduction in fatigue, feeling calmer. I feel like my momentum's going up and I'm getting more done, but I feel guilty because I'm not working harder. I said, you're not. You're just not blowing yourself up anymore. Okay. So here are some things that this will, Myers-Briggs, and that, you know, enhancing your success in your personal and business life. You know, these are things you need to think about. You know, if you embrace all of these, you're going to go faster. If you embrace one of them, you're going to see a difference. Number 1, you need to learn your preference. You need to know what it is. You can't use it to leverage what's going on around you if you don't know yourself. And it's the responsibility of the individual to learn their preferences. If you choose not to, it's a choice. But if you choose to do it and you go deeper than the surface, it's very, very powerful. Okay. You need to learn to recognize at a higher level situations where you're at risk. And this is to help you eliminate or reduce the frequency of the big negative. Every time you eliminate one of these situations in the course of a year, your success is going to go up, your momentum is going to go up, your fatigue is going to go down, your confidence is going to go up, and you're going to get calmer. A lot of good things happen when you don't have the big trauma, which is why it's so important not to be in that situation in the first place. Myers-Briggs will help you to learn how to flow with others authentically. You don't have to change yourself. You don't have to make yourself into something else. It will teach you at a different level. And this is tied into diversity. Well, I've got it at the next one too. I mean, it just came, I was like, wow, nobody talks about how this could help with diversity, but it does. And I went into a Washington, D.C. lobby group that's won several awards this year, like a year after they did this big mega dose of Myers-Briggs. And they didn't tell me in the first meeting that, you know, several of the employees weren't even talking to each other. And then they wanted me to, quote, fix that, the Myers-Briggs count. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. But what the people came to find out is the people that were having issues working together and communicating together, when we got to the root of the problem, it really had to do with the fact that there were a couple people whose preferences were, you know, one was on the head side of the coin and the other one was the tails, and neither one of them would move. So they were butting heads all the time. And once they understood that the other person was not their mortal enemy, it was just somebody who needed the data in a different way. And once they gave it to them, this stuff vanished like taking a fan and sucking the smoke out of your kitchen, you know, over the stove. It was freaky how fast it was. I mean, it was 3-4 hours and I left and the CEO called me and I was like exhausted. He's like, look, I got a line of people out here talking about these stuff. So-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. They're talking. I said, dude, they never hated each other. They're not evil. They just didn't understand that, you know, one person wanted to give the facts as nothing but the facts. And the other person always wanted to know, well, how does this impact the person, the people? And since the first person wouldn't give them what they wanted, the second person's like, if you're not giving me my fish or steak the way I want it cooked, the answer is no. And they just kept going back and forth. But I mean, a lot of these big areas of conflict, if you boil it down and go backwards and go, well, what is the real reason this is happening? This is a big part of it. Recognize the power of diversity at a deeper level. When you get down into how you take in data, how you decision on data, how you act on data, what you come to realize is that each of us in our infinite awesomeness, we're only one letter on the side of the coin. You know, there's another side that's not our preference. And so what you learn early on is, and I had a list of people at Wachovia that helped me. Whenever I did I had a big presentation, something for my boss, something that was going to be super high visibility, I would have my little secret session where I would put my presentation together, and I, had come to talk to people on the team to know who was not the same type as me, and I would show this to them in advance, and they would help me. So learn how to influence decisions better, recognize when you need a different perspective, and learn how your preferences influence teams. Okay, second to the last slide, the journey in terms of when I work with people, this is the order things go in. You've got Myers-Briggs step 1. You've got a decision-making and communication style report. They're tailored to the individual according to their preference that they establish in the step 1. So this is the sequence. We have, I have a module I'm working with now using MBTI to enrich emotional intelligence. And then I have, for people that get through that, I have select your area of interest, where I will show them the course offerings for my master practitioner and say, you pick the thing you want to learn. I'll get the materials and learn the information, and I'll create the facilitation for you. Okay, all the modules can be delivered remote with zero loss of effect, because the information you're discussing is identical whether it's remote or in person. All the modules include facilitation. All the reports are customized to the individual. This can all be done remotely. Modules 2 and 3 include customized work aids available for teams or groups. And you can look at this later, but I have like a timeline. So like I said, I've known D2, I've been a member of Urban Financial Services Coalition. So I'm offering very large discounts for anyone in this organization that wants to take this step to help themselves. And it's going to help me because it will help me satisfy my credentialing requirements. Okay, that concludes my presentation. I really appreciate you being here and your interest. Find me on LinkedIn. I'll accept your invite. Okay, D2, I'm gonna hand this back to you.
Thank you so much, Russ. We have a couple of questions in the chat. Here's sure. One question is, recently companies have been extolling the virtues of failing fast. This might be more of a tech industry thing than financial services, which is more conservative. How do you reconcile this with eliminating the big negative? How do you reconcile the virtue of failing fast with eliminating the big negative?
Okay, I don't think the failing fast is connected only to big tech. And like I said, I trained, I consider SAP big tech because they're like the predominant business software in the world. And I went to Germany and China training their global team. So I've had some experience with and in big tech. My mentor was out of Google. I worked in different industries. I think the concept that we're talking about here when they're saying failing fast, what there's, really what that's describing is a method of developing yourself where you're constantly moving forward. You're not pausing as much as the waiting see person, or we're going to wait for our competitor to show us as safe, because by the time your competitor does that, the whole market is changing, and then it makes you moving to square A obsolete because it's not the answer anymore. The failing at, fail fast is like saying, hey, we need to move very fast to even survive. So where this comes into play with the big negative is, I'm going to go right back to the car example, or this could be a fighter jet. The faster you go in your car, if you're paying attention, I'm not saying if you're not paying attention. If you're a Formula One race driver and you're going 200 some miles an hour, I can guarantee you're going to pay attention to things like your tachometer, your speedometer. You're going to pay attention to your controls more closely the faster you're going, because if you wreck, it's a bigger impact, okay? So how this relates to the question is, when you're using Myers-Briggs, you know what your indicators are, and you're going to be checking those at a greater frequency. You may not be doing this once a week twice a week. Like when I told you about that list I had, that's when I was an IT project manager and stuff was blowing up every day. So before I started every day, I looked at this. So the faster you have to go, the more you have to look at this so you can both go fast, make better decisions on the fly, and not blow yourself up, because you're going to have a lot more chances, which makes this stuff even more important. Because when you go that fast, you're just fast forwarding the negative coming up. Be like going down the highway and knowing if you're running 500 miles an hour, you're going to encounter an accident or a pothole faster than somebody that's only going 55. So actually it makes this even more important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think for a lot of folks, you know, they have the misconception about failing, you know, like they have to be perfect. And because they feel like they have to be perfect, and this is sometimes something that impacts, you know, minorities, you know, the failing, you know, is identified with who they are versus the failing being a part of the learning opportunity, you know, because some of the most successful people, you know, have failed. You know, Sam Walton, you know, his first project, you know, went bankrupt,
right.
But he didn't stop. He learned from it and kept moving forward. I have another question in the chat, Russ. You know, what is the biggest misconception of Myers-Briggs? Biggest misconception?
There's a couple of them, but I would say, I think the largest misconception that people have, there's a couple big ones, but one of the ones that I find it makes me cringe the most is they somehow connotate the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator as being some type of test or evaluation tool that designates what their ability or what they can do, or, you know, it's somehow measuring their worth or ability. And it does none of that. What it does is indicate what your preference is, nothing more. But when we get into the facilitation, I mean, the guy that trained me, Otto Kroger, facilitated 3 US presidents. And when he facilitated me, and I was telling my wife, you saw her picture in the beginning, and I was telling her about when I met Otto, and I begged him to give me his PowerPoint. I said, please, 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 you've done 3 presidents, you've written a book, you're like the Albert Einstein of Myers-Briggs, please give me your PowerPoint. If you would just give it to me, I said, I'll never inject my ego. I won't even change your very yucky, old school blue and gray line. I won't even change your background. And he gave it to me. And I said, I've kept that promise for over 13 years. I don't say anything that's not on that slide, but it works. It's powerful. But all this information about how he explains it is in there. And that's one of the key points, is because if you think that the Myers-Briggs is a test and you're fearful that it's going to find out some deep, dark secret, like I remember when we took this at Solveig, you know, we were the sales trainers. We were supposed to be the elite. And when Bob, our boss, came and says, you're going to take this, when they left, you know, I remember all of us going, OMG, he's going to find out we're really insane and fire us. It's, you know, and it really wasn't about that. He was trying to cultivate us. But given that I've experienced all these emotions, I know they exist and I have an idea why they exist. But that's the biggest, one of the very largest, is it's some type of test that measures either your psychological health or your ability, and it doesn't do any of that. That's not what it is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Russ. And then here's quickly the last question.
Yes.
And it was put in here twice. Can you share quickly the secret to gaining endorsements on LinkedIn?
Ask for him. Ask for him.
There you go. There you go.
President Truelove, when we get connected, I'm going to be asking you for one tomorrow. That's how you get them. Okay, so yes, so that was the short answer, is ask for them. But here's how it rolls out. You know, when I was doing my internet research days, I was in a training thing, and the lady who was facilitating me, this was when LinkedIn had 400,000 people, and she just came out of, there was like 25 people, and she said, Russ, this would be very good for you. And I trusted Laura, and I still like her 20 some years later. So I just blindly did what she said. And when I got in there, she says, okay, you've got your profile, it looks good, get some endorsements. And I said, I don't want to ask people about that because I'm a INTJ, I'm an introvert. That's not my preference. And she said, look, just here's the thing, is you work with people and they legitimately get to know you, periodically say, hey, could you share your experience of what it was like to work with me? Since you just did it. And over the years, they added up. But it's very useful because when people don't know me, I can say, if you want to see what it's like to work with me, go read the endorsements. If you want to see what it's like to manage me, see what my bosses said, see what the people I said, take it all together, compare that to what you've experienced personally, and figure out, does this all jive? Does it go, is it consistent? If the answer is yes, you know, it helps you move more rapidly forward without, you know, making a mistake. So the short answer is ask for it. And for anyone I work with, if you ask me for one, you know, I'll have some experience from which to write one, and I'll do that. And I teach stuff on LinkedIn profile. It's part of your marketing, but it's money. It's worth its weight in gold. And mine has gotten me, it's helped me secure at least $300,000 plus jobs. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Russ. Thank you so much. So those of you who are interested in connecting with Russ and getting more information from Russ, Russ is going to put his, he already put his LinkedIn profile in the chat. I'll ask for him to do it again, so it'll be right up top and you can connect with Russ directly. So let's give him a virtual hand clap for his wonderful presentation and his ability to share his knowledge. In terms of our special announcements, please, if you, many of you have already voted early, make sure that someone in your family votes. Make sure your colleague, make sure that the person that takes care of your dry cleaning, you know, make sure that everyone votes in this election, because every vote counts. Next week, October the 14th, we will have a special session. We have a special guest. We have Mr. Charles Stewart, who is one of the founding members of he's a retired executive vice president of Regions Bank, but he's also one of the founding members of the National Association of Urban Bankers. So he is going to share the story of how we came to be as an organization and the challenges that he, as an African-American, encountered in the early 70s and 80s, and how he's transitioned to use that to have success in the 2000s. And if you're not a member of Urban Financial Services Coalition, we want to invite you to be a member. If you haven't renewed your membership, please renew your membership. There's always room for you at the coalition. You can go to ufscnet.org and become a part of this professional family. And depending on the city where you are, if there's a local chapter there, you can join the local chapter. If not, you can become a national member of the organization. Lastly, I always like to close. This is my favorite quote. All of you should probably be able to say this by now. It's to be a river and not a reservoir. And what does a reservoir do? It keeps all the information to itself and doesn't share with other people, and everything within it dies. So a river, man, the river takes all its good nutrients, pushes it downstream, and everywhere it goes, things turn to life. You know, relationships get better. You know, people's money in their pockets get better. Their impact in their community is magnified. So the information that you shared today, please share it with your colleagues. And those of you who met new people, please connect with them on LinkedIn. And now we will ask everybody to unmute themselves and say good night.